Thanks for joining me today for another episode of the Healthy AF Podcast. With me today are the hosts of the Meat Mafia Podcast, Brett and Harry. Guys, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you guys taking the time to join me. It's been too long since we've seen each other, and we got to catch up soon, but thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Dave. We're pumped for this one.
Yeah, I think, Harry actually connected with you first at Paul Saldino's retreat in 2022.
Yeah.
And that was kind of wild. I didn't even know you had this bubbling in the works, at that time. But
I didn't either.
yeah, I think you guys were still Twitter maybe at that point. Yeah. And then of course KetoCon, but you guys hosted our health event here, the alternative health event in Nashville. And we got to really have a good time and bring a lot of good people together. So I'm glad you guys could join me because you guys are doing a lot to push out there the message of the benefits of animal-based diet. I mean, you guys have really interviewing so many people and really unpacked a lot of that to help people understand those benefits. So, and I think it's because of a personal experience for both of you, especially you, Brett, but with just, for both of you with your personal health journeys, and it's kind of an outflow of your own experience, it seems like.
No, I think that's the perfect way to put it. We feel fortunate to be able to do that too. And to your point, Zane, we're both fairly young guys. I'm 29, Harry's 30. We played college baseball together, and that's ultimately how we became really close friends. And I think, going through college and graduating college, we both felt like we were kind of doing what everyone else was doing, whether it was, drinking at happy hours, following kind of like the standard American diet, stressed out, and ultimately just felt like our health that we thought we were super healthy because we were college athletes, but really just didn't feel like we were at the top of our game or performing at the level that we should have. And, through digging into whether it was a carnivore approach or an animal-based version of eating, we really just reclaimed this energy and vitality, and we're operating at a level that we didn't even know existed. And that was really what inspired us to start the show shortly after you and Harry got to meet in Costa Rica, was that, the more that Harry and I would talk about this, we remember thinking like every food that they're telling us not to eat are actually the foods that made us feel our best. And the foods that they're telling us to eat were actually what we felt, kind of zapped us of energy. I feel like a lot of those foods were responsible for me getting autoimmune issues. So we just felt like there was this need to really correct the narrative and having that mindset of like, well, if not us, then who is actually going to tell it? So we feel like it's a great responsibility that we have, and we love doing it. And, we're 270 episodes into the show, and we've just been amazed by how many people have had their own incredible healing stories. And the body is such an amazing, resilient piece of machinery. And we just hope that we can spread the message as far and wide as possible so other people understand that they too have the ability to reclaim their health through these ancestral foods that have always been available to us.
That's awesome. Let's dig into that a little bit with your personal health journeys. I know, Brett, you had IBS actually through college as a healthy, athlete, right? Thriving through college. You're playing college ball and still struggling with health issues that most people probably wouldn't even assume was going on.
Definitely. Yeah, it was definitely surprising when everything went down, because I was 21 when I first started getting sick. So what happened was, so Harry and I played college baseball together at a small school up in Boston, and I was working an internship in New York City. And so I would take the train 2 hours there, 2 hours back. So it was kind of a bomb of a commute. And what I started noticing as the summer was getting deeper and deeper, I was actually getting more and more urgency to have to go to the bathroom. And I was also developing blood in my stool. And, a lot of young men, it's really embarrassing. So a lot of people don't talk about it until the symptoms really get too late and you have a full-blown autoimmune disease. And that was definitely the camp that I fell into, where I didn't tell my parents about it. I didn't really tell my doctor about it. And by the end of the summer, I was going to the bathroom 30 plus times a day, couldn't keep any food down. I lost 30 pounds. Yeah, I think I was walking around at 180 at the start of the summer. And by the end of the summer, I was like 150, looked like a skeleton. Ended up getting sent to the hospital, right to the ER. And, I did a colonoscopy and I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. So to your point, Zane, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease are two different versions of irritable bowel disease. They're both autoimmune diseases. So, when you look at a chart, autoimmune diseases over the last 100 years have skyrocketed. So I think there's a great case to be made that, diet and lifestyle changes that have happened over the last century have led to this explosion of disease. And I fell into the camp of ulcerative colitis. So effectively, I had so much inflammation built up in my large intestine, my colon, it ends up metastasizing into these like bloody ulcers, for lack of a better term. And you really just can't keep any food down. Your body can't process its nutrients. Everything is just going right through you. And so these autoimmune diseases, they tell you that they're incurable and the best that they can do is put them into remission. So I immediately went on a cocktail of steroids, medication, immunosuppressant drugs. I was on a drug called Remicade, which is a really powerful drug that has a whole host of side effects to it. And so I was getting that administered via a blood infusion every 8 weeks. And that infusion costs $60,000 per infusion. So for the 6 years that I was on that drug, I cost the medical system $2.4 million, which is pretty amazing to think about the millions of people that also have autoimmune diseases that are on similar drugs and medications and how much that's costing our country. It's pretty mind boggling. And really everything changed for me, Zane, in 2019, because that's when I first discovered the carnivore diet for the first time. And so I listened to Dr. Sean Baker go on Joe Rogan's podcast. He explained this concept of an all animal product diet that was effectively a removal diet of animal products. And I learned that not only are animal products wrongly demonized, they're some of the most nutrient dense foods you can be eating, and they're also the most bioavailable. So your body is actually able to utilize the nutrients in a way that a lot of standardized American foods aren't able to be done. So I tried the diet for 2 weeks because at that point I really didn't have anything to lose. I was a young guy that didn't want to be dependent on drugs and meds for the rest of my life. And almost immediately, I felt the incredible benefits of nourishing my body with the right foods. My stomach drastically improved. I actually felt this like clearing of inflammation kind of leave my body. I had incredible energy. My thoughts were amazing. Any anxiety that I had went away. I was kind of like effortlessly putting muscle on at the gym. I was waking up every single morning alert at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And like anything else, I just went deeper and deeper with it and did a fairly strict carnivore diet for about a year. And so flash forward to 2021, I felt that at that time that my body had healed so much that there wasn't necessarily a need to be on these drugs. But Western medicine, they want to keep you on the drug for the rest of your life because they're telling you that there's no cure. And there may be a chance that your body develops immunity to the drug if they pull you off of it. But, I had done enough research. I had seen enough examples of other people go off of these drugs that I felt like I no longer needed them. And so I got another colonoscopy. Not only did I have no inflammation, I had zero microinflammation as well. So I'm the only patient in my GI's history of working with thousands of other patients where he successfully took someone off of this biologic drug. So that's kind of my testimony to the fact that food truly is medicine. And we've seen hundreds of people that have either followed the show or people that we know that have followed a similar approach and have healed their autoimmune diseases. Their gut feels incredible. Their life has changed. And, that was kind of my testimony to the fact that, we really need to nourish our body with the right foods and treat ourselves like we're someone that matters because, we do. And they have incredible consequences and also incredible benefits when you feed your body with the right foods.
For sure. And the elimination diet of that as well. You stop eating foods that were irritating it would be, I would say, part of that. Say take out the bad, get the most nutrient dense food as possible in your body, and it heals itself. I mean, it's like magic, right?
It feels like you're cheating in a lot of ways. And so you actually backtrack and realize how many things you were doing in your prior life that were probably contributing to that inflammation. And it's such a good point, Zane. Harry and I talk about this a lot. The Babson, the school that we went to, it's a great business school. I think it's like close to $80,000 a year. I don't know who's able to afford that, but you're paying all this money. You're just eating processed foods. You're binge drinking on the weekend. Everyone's chronically stressed out. They're taking Adderall and amphetamines to study. And it's kind of made us rethink just the westernized methodology in general of what's actually healthy for you. And you're almost coaxed into this lifestyle that's just terrible for you. And you don't even realize that you're not doing the right things until you consciously pull yourself out of it and really take autonomy over the food and the nutrition that you're putting into your body. And you realize that it's like these foods they're either super additive and give you energy and abundance and can transform who you are, or they just kind of like desecrate that version of yourself and kind of end up a shallow of who you used to be. And I think that's both something that we've experienced. So, I had more of like that serious autoimmune case.
Mm.
And then Harry has like a much more relatable story of, how easy it is to eat a lot of those processed foods in corporate America and put on weight. And, he was able to use animal-based diet to really pull himself out of that.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you had
Is it
more of a weight loss journey. Yeah.
Yeah, it was we have a pretty good yin yang story where mine was definitely like the handwriting was on the wall where if I kind of stayed in my job and kept doing what I was doing, I probably would have ended up in a position where I was unhealthy. And I always, had that athletic background. So it was like doing enough to take care of myself, but still like, wasn't eating great for the 2 years after graduating. Went from like 220 to 240 and it wasn't healthy. It wasn't like I was getting jacked and putting on muscle. I was just like, slowly moving less, sitting indoors all day, um, really not getting nearly enough movement and exercise, and then eating like garbage. Eating when I was stressed out and would just go into the kitchen at work and grab, whatever was there and easiest to consume. So, all highly processed snacks. And like pretty quickly, I'm a bigger guy, but pretty quickly just found myself like looking and not feeling all that great. And it wasn't until like right before COVID when I started to just, alarm bells were going off, like I'm not sleeping all that well. I just am not handling stress all that well anymore. And so I just started to make some changes, and then COVID hit and I had time back in my day where I could just allocate it towards eating better food, doing a little bit more of an intentional job in terms of getting better sleep, moving more. So I was spending a bunch of time just like doing the basics, like walking a bunch, cooking all my meals, and then, sourcing from really high quality sources. Uh, And I saw my health like in a matter of 6 to 8 weeks, just completely turn around.
Wow.
Yeah, I went back to below my playing weight. He was feeling amazing. And after that, I was like, all right, like there's no excuse for getting back to where I was prior to this. So really just saw the benefits of eating an animal-based diet and how quickly it can change. Like that was the thing that stood out to me is like you really put your foot on the gas and like choose, like make the choice. Don't be the person who's like half in, half out. Like make the choice, cut out the booze, get enough sleep, do all the things
Right.
that are necessary in order to make these things really have the highest potency in your life. Invest in that way. And that's the way, the way I did it. I saw results pretty quickly. So, yeah, for me, it was much more of just a lifestyle shift. And after seeing those benefits, I was like, I need to start telling people about this because I was looking around and all my buddies were kind of like in the same boat. Like they're like seeing themselves turn into versions of themselves that weren't as healthy as they used to be. And I know from talking to you that you don't really prescribe to that. The older you get, the, more sick or like less active you have to be. It's like, no, you should age and age in a way where you can do all the things that you want to do and continue to live a badass life. And that was definitely my philosophy at the time and has only been more solidified in my thinking is I want to age in a way where I'm able to do all the fun things that I want to be able to do with my life and still feel like a 20-year-old. That I think it's a pretty powerful testimony in terms of the benefits of just eating the right foods and simplifying the lifestyle a bit.
For sure. Sounds like you guys really caught on. I mean, early in your life compared to what a lot of people, they wait till they're 40 or 45 and they start hitting, health problems, start having, the blood markers and the docs trying to put them on meds. And you guys were like, well, yours was pretty immediate, right? Yours was like, I got to do something right now. You're on the meds. You're having those problems. But it's wild to see. I love seeing it. I mean, I was really interested in longevity and so forth when in my 20s. That's what kind of led me on this career path of fitness. But to see more and more people in their 20s starting to pay attention to this concept of looking at, and I think Austin, I mean, you're in Austin, you got a real strong health community, but it's there's a very strong vegetarian community. I mean, it's kind of like a little slice of California stuck in the middle of Texas. It's like lots of yoga, lots of vegetarian restaurants, lots of, kind of this, that kind of vibe. And then there's grown in the middle of Austin, this wonderful animal-based community. And that seems to be really receptive to this, and it's growing, but if we're really receptive to this, which you guys are obviously a big part of. as far as red meat, that especially with your age group, um, it seems like a lot of the 20 somethings are really buying into the plant-based narrative. It just seems to be like really vibing with overall in the US, whereas you guys have a little bit of a counterculture there. I think that's pretty incredible. I mean, what do you guys hear? Do you guys run into those kind of people still in Austin where you're trying to tell them, no, wait, about the misconceptions of red meat, the messages coming out? I mean, you guys are really talking to a lot of people in the animal-based community, but I'm assuming living and being a young person in Austin, you're still running into people who have these misconceptions about red meat.
Yeah, it's definitely not as drastic as it was when Harry was living in Boston and I was living in New York for a few years. And there definitely is some of that exists. It's funny, our buddy Ryan actually has a clothing company called the Regenaissance, which is a play on regenerative agriculture and a Renaissance movement. And I feel like that's what Austin perfectly is. It's amazing, right? Because Austin in general, it shouldn't be this oasis for health and wellness. It's in the middle of nowhere, Texas. It's 110 degrees every single day in the spring and the summertime, but there's this amazing community of ranchers and then also very intentional consumers that have really leaned into like those ancestral foods that we're talking about. And it's amazing to be around that community. It's very difficult to do a diet or follow a movement when you're on your own. You kind of feel like you're on an island. That's definitely how I felt like when I was in New York City, but I was so motivated to actually cure what was happening to me that didn't really matter. But I think we've seen the compounding effects of when you put yourself in the right community, whether that's, in Nashville and Austin, South Florida, et cetera, like it just compounds so much over time. But the millennial age bracket in general is really interesting because I think we grew up around this time where, these fake meat companies and fake milk companies started raising millions and millions of dollars, which gave them bigger marketing budgets that allowed them to really market about the advantages of, plant-based products versus animal products and kind of a lot of misguided propaganda against animal products too. And so when you do that enough times and put in enough iterations, it can really start to manipulate people and make them assume, oh, so real milk must be bad for me. Therefore, plant-based milk is the healthier alternative for me. When you do a little bit of a deeper dive into the science, you're just realizing that something like Oatly, it's really just, canola oil, sugar, and a blend of other synthetic ingredients too. And it's like mammals are the only thing that can actually make milk. So you can call it milk if you want, but it's not actually milk as God and nature intended it to be. So we are very positively encouraged though. When I did the carnivore diet in 2019, people thought I was out of my mind. But the thing is that we know that these are the right foods that have been designed for us by God to actually consume. And you start to act as your own proof of work. So for someone like you that's 50 years old and you've maintained the shape that you've maintained, people are going to trust you because Zane has such an amazing body of work. Now, for me, 6 years after starting the carnivore diet, people are aware of the fact that I'm no longer on drugs. I look way better. I'm way healthier. So they're like, something that Brett must be doing is working because he's healthier, he's happier, he's living a great life. So I think that's something else too, is kind of getting away from these massive mainstream studies and just focus on the individual person's body of work. And I think that's why we're starting to see this renaissance of this animal-based diet, because people are realizing, wow, I've been plant-based for so long. When I get my blood scores back, I'm nutrient deficient. I don't feel great. I don't have that vim and energy. So let me try introducing some animal products. And a lot of people realize that the light bulb goes off and they feel amazing just by doing that. So I think we kind of have to act as our own proof of work and let that body of work speak for itself.
Absolutely. No, that's what I went through in my 20s. I was vegetarian for 3.5 years. I was making my own almond milk because it wasn't in the stores back then, and it was
That's
like,
how
all we could do was read and experiment. And I was blending up dry almonds, adding water, banana, and honey, and trying to make my own almond milk and eating black beans and rice every day until I got sick. And I can't recover from this weird thing with ulcers in my throat. And the doc said, I think it's your diet. Your immune system should have been able to fight this off, but it couldn't. Add a little salmon and some eggs, and my suddenly, lit up. I was like more energy. I felt better in the gym. I forgot to drink coffee for a few days, which was a big deal. Like I just didn't need it. And so it does when you've gone without it, and suddenly you bring those fats and proteins and all the nutrients that are built in there come into your body. It's like there's an awakening. You feel it, and you'd have to be you'd have to be, really have a lot of cognitive dissonance to ignore it, if you depleted it so much. No, but
But
but I wanted to, well, yeah, the Austin community has really embraced not only the animal-based movement as a diet and carnivore as a diet, but like you said, the regenerative agriculture move towards better raising these meats, better agricultural practices. And right in the middle of Texas, which is of course cattle country, you know what I mean? And that's really, I think that says a lot about the movement, that they
Mhm.
want it to be. It's not a selfishly motivated, like, or a one that's without thought. There's like, where's my meat coming from, and what is the most humane way to get this food that I want? So there's some depth to it, and and I think that's why it's lasted. I think it's more than just a trend there, where it's like, it's really, that's been built into the community, and the framework of an animal-based diet is, well, where are you getting your meat? What's the sourcing? How are they treating the animals? How do we promote this type of agriculture to keep, um, becoming more popular and more known? And which you guys, of course, have done with the podcast. I mean, and that's, I would think, with all the people you've interviewed, I mean, how has that impacted your personal journey, your health journey, or your understanding of things? I mean, how has all the people you interview, you're getting story after story after story. That must have had a great impact on both of you.
It's been profound. I think about some of my favorite conversations are with people that most people walking the streets of any major city may not know their name, but they're people who are providing high quality food to their local communities. Like I think about Ann and Weldon Warren out in Lubbock, Texas. We've gotten to go to multiple conferences with them, have become very close personal friends with them, and their story is incredible. They're one of the first beef providers to Whole Foods in the country, grass-fed beef providers to Whole Foods in the country. And they've really been a part of this movement from the beginning. And this just goes back to what you're talking about in terms of Austin being this hub of not just animal-based eating from a nutritional perspective, but also the agriculture perspective. And we want this to be humanely raised animals that are actually having a positive impact on the soil health and contributing to a food system that can actually support itself. It's all happening in Austin. Like if you pull it apart enough, there's just so many layers to who's contributing. There's the Joe Rogans of the world who are helping get the information out there. Sean Baker was in Austin for a while. Paul Saladino was in Austin for a while. You've got a lot of these influencers who are animal based who are in Austin. A lot of local food providers who are doing a great job supporting the city, giving high quality meat to the city of Austin. And then there's a bunch of restaurants who are going seed oil free. So it's like layers of
Seeking.
this whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just awesome to see. And I think that, with the show, one of my favorite conversations was with Will Harris, who's the you know, he's the rancher in Bluffton, Georgia for White Oak Pastures. And we got to sit down with him for like 2 hours and just hear him talk about his property he got from his father and that had been passed down from his father, and just the generational legacy that he's trying to leave on the land in terms of improving the soil quality and being able to actually provide really high quality food. It's just like coming from where I came from and hearing a story like that, it makes you just so much more bought into what we're doing, because the biggest barrier to Will Harris succeeding is mostly on the informational front. Like there's
Mm.
so much information pushing back against beef, pushing back against regenerative agriculture. And so if we can contribute in any way, it's hopefully the fact that we can help get this information out there. We can help normalize the fact that eating beef from really high quality sources is actually the best way to nourish yourself and still, you know, basically fight back and push back against all these narratives that get put against beef, it being bad for the environment and, all the other things that are said about beef. So it's just great to be able to get those messages out there, and all the people that we've had on the show have just given us so much knowledge and so much momentum with what we're trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know your podcast, and it's pretty diverse. I mean, your podcast isn't just like farmers and people with a health issue. It's been quite a diverse group from all aspects of health, I would say, and then people who are following. Like you said, you wouldn't necessarily know them on the street, but some of them you would, like UFC fighter Michael Chernow from Nashville here. He's like or Michael, yeah,
Chandler,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Chandler. Excuse me, Chandler. Excuse me, and I mean, you've got. It's great to see people who are in the public eye who might take some heat for being, um, animal based or promoting an animal based diet because it's just not the trend. And of course, now we know the UFC fighters aren't really worried about taking any gruff from anybody. And generally speaking, they're pretty outspoken. But that kind of exposure I think has been helpful to making a lot more people listen, because obviously he has to choose the diet, for instance, who that's going to give him the most advantage in the ring. And I mean, there's, it's down to every inch, every small fraction of a percent of advantage he can find, he's going to try to grab it. And if that's what how he chooses to eat, then that says a lot about, what his belief in this type of way of eating, without having to go through a health risk or a health journey, or going through sickness. He's reaching the peak of health, and he can eat whatever he wants, but he's choosing to eat what's going to give him the best performance in the ring. Um, no, and with who you're meeting, I mean, obviously not everyone in Austin has quite the health um, concerns that you guys did to get here. But I think in that community, back to that, I just think that's so important and so valuable, is that community that's down there with Brian Sanders and you guys, and so many of the health coaches I know that are really pushing, like sleep coaches. I mean, it's like Austin has become this hub. People are moving there to be part of this health community because it's just vibrant, and it seems to be put, just really of all places, like you said. It's not Southern California, it's not Miami, it's not some sort of kind of beachy, where everyone this wonderful weather and everyone's outside. It's like it's Austin. and so, but it's growing to the point that I think, are you guys seeing that people flocking there just for that because they have an interest in their health?
I would say 100%. I would say Harry and I meet people almost every single week that have moved to the state to Austin within the last month because they're specifically seeking out this community. That's something that was a common question we would ask a lot of our podcast guests. Hey, what recommendations do you have? Maintaining this lifestyle, throughout the course of your job or in the specific city that you're in, because obviously if you're following animal-based or a carnivore diet, you're probably not drinking alcohol. You're probably packing your lunch. You're the unconventional one in this conventional world that has really led us to get sick. But the interesting thing about, planting yourself in a community with very like-minded people is you can kind of just authentically be yourself, where it's like something like cooking a steak dinner for 8 friends is super common. And in fact, that's really what should be normalized. Putting in the effort, sourcing your meat incredibly well from a rancher you trust, taking the time to put like blood, sweat, and tears into a great meal, and then sitting down and sharing that meal with some of the people that you love and care about the most, that are your friends and family. That's really kind of what's the normalized thing here. So I think it's a hub for people that have made these transformations in their individual cities, and they want to know what it feels like to be like, well, what if there's a massive community of people that are similar to me where I can just authentically be myself? So it's super encouraging to see. I think it's just going to continue to grow more and more. And I think there's other hubs that are starting to open up that are just like that. I think, Nashville's a city that we would place our chips on. I think you were amazed when we went to that Nashville event together, how many other versions of you existed out there that you didn't even need to know about. And that's why I think also we need to make this commitment to do more in-person events, right? Like if you're connecting with someone off of a podcast or Twitter or Instagram, and they have similar values to you and they're in the same area, take the time to go meet them and grab a coffee or hit a workout or something, because that's really how you create this spiderweb effect and build real in-person relationships that with people that you care about.
For sure. Yeah. It really is. It really is. It's that time. I mean, I think of most of these communities, like the community down there in Austin is really driven by, I don't know, maybe you see different, but the age group between like say 25 and 35. And whereas I love going down there and just plugging right in. I don't feel odd at all. But up here in Nashville, I feel quite odd. Like even among peers, other trainers, I meet a few through as clients and so forth. But I mean, most of the people I meet are really over 40. They're crazy in careers and families and things like that. And plugging into something like that has been, I think, a challenge. I do see the future for Nashville having that. There is some demand for that. But I mean, I think Austin is probably the example as to what we need to look for, and if in some way borrow from and connect with. But I mean, I look forward to when I go down to Austin because I just feel like I know who the people are to plug in with, and I don't feel such an oddball. And that's a real thing. That's one of the reasons I went down to the event with Paul Saladino's event where I met you, Harry. It's like you're suddenly around all of these like-minded people, and you don't, the conversation starts on a higher level. You don't have to start explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. Everybody's already there. And then you start talking about higher level things like sleep and fitness and movement and so many other things that you build the foundation on that nutrition foundation, so yeah, it's definitely, I think they're more challenging. At least I found it that way in Nashville. Whereas when I just show up in Austin, it's kind of like they're everywhere. I already know where they are. I know who they are. And but I would look forward to that kind of energy coming to Nashville for sure, if we can somehow borrow a piece of it. But it is invaluable to have that kind of network of people around to reinforce your identity in it. And I want to frame this correctly. I don't think your identity should be in your diet. Your identity is in your pursuit of health, right? It's not like I name myself by what I eat so much as my pursuit is health. I have an intellectual curiosity to keep moving forward. And that's what's brought me to this unconventional diet that is part of my total strategy for longevity and health as I age. And, when the community is all moving in that direction, it's fantastic. When you're around a bunch of people in your life who do not have those healthy values, it's much harder to maintain your healthy values. You know what I mean? There's an influence there.
Yes.
So I think, that for people who are trying to make a shift into a new health journey or a new place because they're tired of just where they are, they've got to find those people. They've got to bring people around them to reinforce those habits or that desire to be healthier, to make those choices that are unpopular, and that there aren't the choices being crammed down your throat by Netflix on a monthly basis. You know what I mean? It's not the ones who are being funded by the fake meat companies and the researchers that are funded by our processed food companies. This really is a grassroots movement. The grass being eaten by the cows, but it seems like it's really bubbled up from almost a counterculture or people who are willing to question the narrative, because the narrative is so strong. And it seems to, while we can see holes in it, we can see it faltering, there's so much money behind it. It just keeps coming. And so are you guys seeing, I mean, what do you think the future of meat? I mean, we have a lot of threats from policy, people trying to legislate vegetarianism or legislate in certain states, like where you were in New York City as well, Meatless Mondays. Where do you see this grassroots movement going as far as affecting the country as a whole, possibly policy, and then regenerative ag? I mean, you guys are talking to people all the time. Where do you see this moving?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about the future, knowing that there's so many different plots, right? So if
Yeah.
you're in New York, you're probably thinking entirely differently than if you're in Austin, Texas. So New York, Mayor Adams pushing the vegan agenda. They're meatless Mondays and vegan Fridays, and our kids, the next generation is now being indoctrinated into this way of thinking that meat is bad in a very real way at the school system, at the school level. And then in Austin, you have people opening up more of these charter schools where they're teaching people actually how to farm and raise their own food. And there's almost this entirely different way of thinking happening all across the country. So it's my take and my feeling that there's just going to be multiple realities out there. Quite frankly, like a lot of people living in cities are going to likely have food options slowly taken away from them. Our mutual friend, Jay Gulanello, talks about the C40 cities. And he's really one of the old people, like outwardly talking about how this is very, very concerning. It's essentially 40 cities all across the globe who are making a stance against meat and against certain foods being promoted and some foods being taken away. And so it's just interesting to see that like these cities are actually taking a stance in that way. And, if people care enough, I think that there will be a big enough pushback. But, I just do think that jurisdictions are going to approach this situation differently. And if you're in a city, I would just think that the odds of you probably having fewer options when it comes to the types of foods that you want in the future is a very real possibility. So I think that's one of the reasons why with the show, we're trying to connect more people with their ranchers directly. So you know where your food's coming from, so you can continually support the people that are providing you food so that relationship doesn't get, tarnished or, there are ways for you to still have access to really high quality food.
I gotcha. Yeah. It's also so very regional movement.
Yeah. Very regional grassroots movement. And I would say, to expand on what Harry said, I think the people that are going to do it right in the future are the people that have really learned from the past, when we had more of like a sacred almost like a sacred triangle in our food system, which was rancher, processor, customer. Extremely decentralized transaction where the rancher was doing things the right way. They were incorporating regenerative practices. They were practicing in line with nature, and they were taking this nutrient dense product. They were taking it to a local processor. There used to be like one processor per county. Now there's like 4 processors that control 85% of all the meat in the grocery stores. And then they would take that local processor, and then they would be able to actually sell the product directly to customers. So I think that the people that are going to do it right moving into the future are going to be really intentional and build that relationship with their local rancher. And I think that's table stakes, regardless of where you live. I think a lot of people in major metropolitan cities, when COVID hit and they were going onto the shelves and there were these meat shortages and food shortages, people that had relationships with their local rancher were vastly unaffected because they knew exactly how much meat the rancher had. They probably had it in some type of a chest freezer, and they were ready to go, all business as if nothing had changed. So I think we're going to continue to see this decentralization for people that want to take autonomy over their food, their health, the lives of their family. And I also think we're probably going to see this amazing renaissance of first generation farmers, of people that have maybe come from corporate backgrounds or tech, et cetera, that are really passionate about supplying food to their community. And I think they're going to tap into different types of venture capital arms and fundraising arms, et cetera, and actually start to raise capital to be able to acquire farmland that's so expensive right now and really do things the right way. Perennial Pastures in San Diego is a great example of that. Their rancher, Kevin, and their founder, he decided that he wanted to leave his tech job to start ranching. And he's actually been able to raise $2 million through venture capital to be able to expand more land, do things regeneratively, serve the local Southern California community with a really nutrient dense product, and also be able to ship out their beef across the country. So I think it's, decentralization, more first generation ranchings, and then more of what Harry is talking about is like, people are just going to start migrating to these hubs that will encourage that decentralization and freer transactions with our food.
Right. Well, we've seen that, haven't we, over the last couple of years? Just, I think COVID kicked it off with all the restrictions and people started moving, and it really hasn't slowed down here. We still see a different California license plate on the road every week. There's another one, and you guys are getting that flux as well. But I guess that makes sense. People are going to move where they can get what they want, where people have the community they want. They're starting to value that community. And if it doesn't, if where they live and where they are doesn't provide that for them, they they'll take the chance to move. And working remotely obviously helps that as well when people can work more and more remotely. That's incredible. I'm glad to see and hear that there's people actually fundraising to start a farm, but they've never done it before. That's encouraging. It's like, talk about taking a step back in time a little bit to leave tech and go towards farming.
Totally.
That says something about the level of conviction of someone who probably realized that the path he was on wasn't going to be his best path, the most healthful path for him. And he when he realized that, he dove in and went all in, so to speak. And that's amazing. That's a great story. So you guys obviously are been as I mentioned before, the purveyors of these stories. So that's incredible, and really appreciate what you guys have done to spread that word. You guys have definitely been part of that growth, not only in Austin, but across the country, where people are getting a better understanding of the benefits of animal products. And let's say, so thank you from everyone else, because it's like, there's lots of voices out there that are, how do I say this politely? They have their own agenda, right? Which is to promote, and I'm all for it. I'm all for using a podcast or a voice to promote a business. And business is part of what keeps things going. You guys have been able to have these conversations and to spread the word on this way of diet without it turning it into a one size fits all kind of diet, right? It's like there's more than one way to approach this. There's more than, find what works best for you, but don't leave these foods are vital, and these animal foods are vital. And so I have to commend you guys on not being creating this little tiny box of this is how it's supposed to be done, but really giving people the information they need to make their own decisions and to walk into it and have their own journey to find out what their needs are and what's going to serve them. And that's sometimes hard to do to keep that open-mindedness in your messaging. Or really, you guys didn't really have your own messaging. You had your own. You said these are the people we want to interview and let them tell their story. So you've really let people tell their own story, and I think that's what sets you guys apart. Is you're not trying to create your own little paradigm or your own mantra or dogma. It's been very dogma free. And so I have to say thank you for that, because that was much needed.
We appreciate you saying that, because we felt the same way. Like, coming into the nutrition world, both of us having backgrounds totally outside of the health and wellness space, just felt like it's a lot of inbound fighting over things. They ultimately end up sounding like religion, where people draw lines on what you can and can't do, and then it just starts to sound a little bit. It starts to sound a little bit crazy at a certain point, where, like, everyone is saying something completely different, and the average person is sitting there looking for someone to give them practical advice on how to get healthier, and we can't even give them a basic overarching message on, like, hey, this is like directionally where you should be going. And you don't necessarily need to be perfect, but if you're incorporating animal foods and eating enough of these nutrient-dense foods, you're really going to see your health take a turn for the positive. And I think, there was just a lot of green space in terms of being able to come in and try to be more practical than what you typically see in the health and wellness nutrition world, where it's like, no, you need to eat exactly like this, or you're gonna be sick. Like, it's
Right.
not the case. And I think our whole approach has been, we really just want to see people get healthier. We want to see people tap into the best health that they've ever had. And ultimately what that means is getting rid of processed foods and replacing them with real foods from the highest quality source that you can afford. And so as long as we're leading with that message, I think that we'll reach people that need to hear it. And like you said, we've been really letting our guests do a lot of the talking, and trying to just put really high quality people out there on the show and promote their message, give them a platform, because we know that, that there's more than one voice out there, and people will resonate with the person that speaks most to them, not just one person who's kind of using this like dogmatic approach. So,
Right. Well, what's next for you guys? I mean, what's on the horizon for Meat Mafia? I mean, I know you guys came out with your protein supplement last year, which was amazing, and with a blend of organs in there. I mean, it's a nutrient. Talk about a nutrient dense protein supplement as you need to fill in those blanks with. I mean, it really does the trick with more than just protein. Obviously, you got all the nutrients in there from the liver and the organs involved. You got any events coming up? What can people look forward to from the Meat Mafia?
Such a good question. I think Zane, it's just amazing what you can do when you put your content out there on the internet. And that's what I would encourage anyone. If you feel like you have these gifts in your head that you've never shared before, I would just start finding that medium that works for you, whether it's short-term YouTube videos, Twitter threads, Instagram posts, etc. I think you would be shocked what you can do when you find that medium that you're best qualified to do, and then you stick with it over a long enough time horizon. I mean, we started writing Twitter threads and recording podcasts about 2 years ago. And, if you were to tell us that we'd be 270 episodes in now, our own supplement company that's in line with our beliefs, the team that we've been fortunate enough to work with here in Austin, we would have said you're crazy. But that's like when you play this amazing compounding game of the internet, when you find your right medium, people will really take to that passion of yours. And it's amazing what you can do. But I think for us, it's really simple. I think just continuing to promote this message and as far and wide as possible. We're doing about 2 podcast episodes a week right now. We've thought about maybe getting back into 3 a week, which is what we used to do. So keep cranking on the podcast. We've tentatively thought about some different book ideas or documentary ideas as like long-term projects. We see what you and Dr. Ken did. I think that's been pretty inspirational to us. We'd love to write a book that's really in line with what we feel about the food system in general. I think that would be really cool. But I think just try and grow the brand as possible and just try and make as many people healthy as possible. The things that light us up the most are having amazing conversations with people that we can learn from, and then hearing from people that have benefited from the show, that have maybe had ulcerative colitis, and now 2 years later, they're eating animal-based diet and off the drugs and medication and feel amazing. It's really just spreading this ancestral knowledge that everyone is entitled to.
That's awesome. Yeah. What a fun way to do work. What a fun way to just get stories and talk to people.
Definitely. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are maybe disenfranchised with the job that they're in. And I think it's important to recognize that there's more opportunity than what's ever existed before. And you literally live in an age where you can record a video on your phone or post a piece of content and it can literally change your entire life. And I hope people walk around with that mindset more, because that's, definitely the embodiment of what we've done and a lot of the other guests that you've had on. And I think that if we can do it, anyone can do it. Honestly, it's really just that mindset and that conviction behind it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, tell everyone that for the few that probably may not have heard that you guys or know where to find you, tell everybody where the best place to find you guys.
Yeah, for the podcast, you can find us on Spotify and Apple. So it's the Meat Mafia Podcast. And then we're on all social platforms. So we have 2 separate Twitter accounts. It's Meat Mafia Brett and Meat Mafia Harry. And then our Instagram is Meat Mafia Media. And then we have @Noble Origins, which is our supplement company. That's on Instagram. And then it's Eat Noble Origins on Twitter. What else?
I think nobleorigins.com. That's pretty much it.
Nobleorigins.com. Okay. And you guys, of course, all your podcasts are on YouTube as well. You guys have lots of snippets and nuggets on there beyond the larger form, the long form podcast.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of clips, a lot of videos. Yeah, it's just been really fun and we feel really lucky to be able to do it.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person soon. If not at Hack Your Health, then hopefully sooner. If not, definitely at Hack Your Health, but if not sooner, I should say. Maybe sometime in the spring I can get down there. If you guys come up here, we'll have to get together.
We would love that.
Steaks on us.
Yeah.
I'll pick you up on that one. All right.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Man. You
Thanks,
too.
man.
Bye.